quick question. Have you ever actually read through the Bill of Rights and thought, what instilled those thoughts into our founding fathers? Why do we have a Bill of Rights? In fact, if you've looked into history at all, you know that there were actually serious debates as to whether or not we should have a Bill of Rights. There's the Federalists who believed that actually, we're talking James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, they believed that we should not have a Bill of Rights, whereas people like Patrick Henry and George Mason, other founders, believed we should. Let's discuss that and kind of watch. We're going to do a retrospective, or rather a post-mortem, on the Bill of Rights and kind of pick apart some of the arguments. Also, of course, we're going to talk today about the new epic city. What is America? Can we have Islamic centered cities in America? Is that something that we can do? Can we have an ethno-state within our state of Texas specifically? We're talking about the body positivity movement, juxtapose that to identity in Christ. Yes, we're going to talk about the tariff wars, and of course, some Nicki knows facts and the Great Divorce, Chapter 7. Here on Further Everyday. Howdy, Jonathan Fiala for Further Everyday, sitting in the chair of philosophy to my right. I've got Miss Nicki. How's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Glad to have you there in the chair of theology.
Yes, it's good to be here.
To my left, downstream of philosophy and theology, we've got Charlie.
We're going to do the culture thing today.
And to his left, we will have Steve, but he is late today. He has responsibilities and people that he is taking care of, and he will be here eventually in the chair of politics. Because, again, your theology dictates your philosophy, which dictates your culture and politics and economics as well, which we don't have anyone in that chair today, but you guys get the point. So let's kind of dive in real quick. How much of the Federalist, anti-Federalist debate had you looked at before we started opening up the
not much. In I'm going to call myself a late bloomer to the all of the older documents, and it's one of the things that I wished was done more in our schools. Was I wish that we would cover more of these things in a deeper level. Maybe some of you listening and watching did have these things covered in depth. But where I was, we did not. And so I just wished I had done more. I wished I had understood more. So I'm kind of a late bloomer on this, and I really appreciate the opportunity to go through this on the show, because it's very enlightening. And when you note things that affect, I'm going to say, policy and direction, they incur a lot of debate. The reason I think, I don't want to talk too long on this, but the reason I think that we see so much political chaos today is because there's a lot at stake in terms of the direction of policy in our belief how we should move forward.
I think so. So I want to get some of this in here real quick, and then I want to pick this apart, because, again, the Bill of Rights was originally something that the framers, we're talking Madison, Hamilton, John Jay, they did not want a Bill of Rights. And you might ask why that is. Let's start with the argument against or for the Bill of Rights, and then we're going to go to Hamilton, and then we're going to talk about Patrick Henry. So for right now, Mr. Producer, if you could pull up cut one. This is one of the framers, George Mason, who you may not be familiar with, but he had a significant role. However, in his objections to the Constitution speech in 1787, he said this: "There is no declaration of rights, and the laws of the general government being paramount to the laws of the Constitution and the several states, the declaration of rights in the separate states are no security." We need one in the federal, he's saying. "Nor are the people secured even in the enjoyment of the benefit of common law." So what he was concerned about, you got to remember, we're in the Articles of Confederation era right here, between 1781 and 1792. 91. We're in this position of, we're underneath the Articles of Confederation, and now we're considering a new constitution, a stronger, more robust federal government.
So we're in a weak guiding document phase.
Correct. And each state has a strong constitution, which the Federalists say, we want a federal government, and that has to have a strong constitution, and the states have to have a strong constitution, and they have to buff it against the federal and create a double set of checks and balances. what George Mason was saying is, you guys are saying we're going to leave out a Bill of Rights because the states have that. I don't think that's sufficient. I think the federal government needs to have a Bill of Rights stated, things that cannot be taken away. However, Hamilton fires back with this in Federalist 86. Mr. Producer, I go further and affirm that bills of rights in the sense and extent and to the extent in which they are contended for are not only unnecessary to the proposed Constitution, but would even be dangerous. They would contain various exceptions to power not granted, and on this very account would afford a colorable pretext to claim more than what were granted. For why declare things shall not be done when there's no power to do? Now, you might be wondering, what is he getting at? Should we talk about Obergefell? Should we talk about Roe v. Wade? Okay. So there was a real concern about putting a Bill of Rights into the federal. Let's go a little bit further on Hamilton, if you would, Mr. Producer, cut 3. Why, for instance, should it be said that the liberty of the press shall not be restrained when no power is given to the federal government by which restrictions may be imposed? I will not contend that such a provision would confer a regulating power, but it is evident that it would furnish to men disposed to usurp a plausible pretense for claiming that power. Because that power is specifically granted from the government as opposed to being recognized. This was Hamilton's fear, that we were going to not recognize the God-given gifts, but we were going to grant them as a Bill of Rights. So this was Hamilton's perspective. Next one, Mr. Producer, is going to be cut 4. They might urge with a semblance of reason that the Constitution ought not to be charged with the absurdity of providing against the abuse of an authority which was not given, and that the provision against restraining the liberty of the press afforded a clear implication that a power to prescribe proper regulations concerning it was intended to be the vested interest in the national government. The government doesn't give you these rights. They recognize these rights. And so if they recognize these rights, why are we putting these bills, these amendments to the Constitution, which the Constitution itself provides a strict rubric of this is what is allowed. So we, in a way, and I want you all to think about this in the comment section. By the way, if you're one of our regular listeners on YouTube, Rumble, or on the podcast at Further Every Day, anywhere you can find that channel on those sources. PSB live Sundays, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Central, God's time zone. You can find us. So live. So PSB in the chat and everyone else, tell me, which side are you going to come out on? Do you think that we should have had a Bill of Rights or not? Think about it for a moment. Put that in the back of your mind and be listening, because Obergefell, the whole Roe v. Wade situation, these are coming out of the Bill of Rights by the interpretation. This is the exact fear that Hamilton had. On the opposite side, you have FISA courts, which are, that wasn't delegated, right? But then again, is it in the federal? And this is where George Mason and Patrick Henry are coming from. And we'll get to Patrick Henry in just a moment. So just going to build that, pause, put that in the back of your head. Think about it. Next cut, Mr. Producer, just going to finish up Hamilton's excerpt out of 86. This may serve as a specimen of the numerous handles which could be given to the doctrine of constructive powers by the indulgence of an injudicious zeal for Bill of Rights. What he's saying is you're saying that the government gives these rights. Once you do that, there's no going back on what the government is giving you versus what they are not allowed to do. So that is Hamilton. Let's hear from Patrick Henry. Counterpoint. Again, you remember Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death. This is at the Constitutional Convention. He said, again, this is going to be number 6, Mr. Producer, we are told that all powers not given are reserved. I am sorry to bring forth hackneyed observations, but, sir, important truths lose nothing of their validity or weight by frequency of repetition. Just because it's true and has been repeated doesn't mean that it's less true. The English history is frequent frequently recurred to by gentlemen. Let us advert to the conduct of the people of that country. The people of England lived without a declaration of rights till the war in the time of Charles I. That king made usurpations upon the rights of the people. So we're going back to the common law, the foundation of common law in Britain. This is where Patrick Henry's coming from. He's saying, look, it doesn't hurt to put the Bill of Rights in, even though it's self-evident. We can still put this in. I think that this gives us clear definition of the letter versus the spirit of the law. The fact that the framers said, we're not saying that the government has the right to give you rights, but rather it's a precautionary addition to the protections against government's excess that we put in a Bill of Rights. That's why Patrick Henry wanted it in. Next slide from Patrick Henry, continuing. Those rights were in great measure before the time undefined. Power and privilege then depended upon implication of logical discussion. Though the Declaration of Rights was obtained from that king, his usurpations cost him his life. The limits between the liberty of the people and the prerogative of the king were still not clearly defined. The rights of the people continued to be violated till the Stuart family was banished in the year 1688. Next one, Mr. Producer. The people of England magnanimously defended their rights, banished the tyrant, and prescribed to William, Prince of Orange, by the Bill of Rights on what terms he should reign. This Bill of Rights put an end to all construction and implication. Before this, sir, the situation of the public liberty of England was dreadful. For upwards of a century the nation was involved in every kind of calamity, till the Bill of Rights put an end to all by defining the rights of the people and limiting the king's prerogative.
So do you have an example of what you're saying?
So when you're looking at the Magna Carta, and specifically looking at what we have, you know what happened before the Magna Carta. The kings were allowed any leeway, and you know the F word. You know what that stands for.
You're right. We talked
Fornication
about that.
under consent of the king, right? That's an acronym. Why did the king have the right to do that? There was no Bill of Rights. There was no limiting power on a king. And the governed said, wait a minute, we are governed under the consent of the aggregate by you. We need to say, these are the circumstances and situations that we will all agree to be governed by you. Hence a Bill of Rights. And our Bill of Rights in America comes largely out of the Magna Carta. And again, it was sort of this fear of an overstep that we slid the Bill of Rights in. Now, I like the First Amendment. I like the Second Amendment. I like all the amendments up to 10. Some of the ones after are good. Some of the ones after are bad. Yep. But it was a good thing that we put that in. So this is what they were fearing, was government overreach. And he has one more thing to add. And then I want to ask you your thoughts, Ms. Nicki. Give me lead to add, Mr. Producer. Go ahead and give me the next cut, please. Thank you. It'll be, 9. Give me lead to add, if I can add anything to so splendid an example, the conduct of the American people. They, sir, thought a Bill of Rights necessary. It is alleged that several states in the formation of their governments omitted a Bill of Rights. To this I answer that they had the substance of a Bill of Rights contained in their constitutions, which is the same thing. Secure to us the great important rights of humanity, and I care not in what form it is done. Basically, Patrick Henry is saying, I don't care if this is a monarchy. I need a Bill of Rights. So let's juxtapose that for just a second before we go to the amendments. You have on one side people saying the government does not grant these things. So a Bill of Rights assumes that the government is granting it, versus the other saying, no, we are just enshrining what the government recognizes. So on one side you have, so let's do point counterpoint. Obergefell, redefining marriage. Roe v. Wade, redefining what can be done to a human life. That comes from an emanation of a penumbra of the rights that are given, right? It's this, and that's exactly the judicial overreach that I think Hamilton wrote about and was concerned about, that they're going to use that as a lever to exact and extract what they can. Then on the other side, the Bill of Rights, in their favor, you look at FISA warrants surveilling presidents. You look at COVID restrictions on your health. You cannot move without a COVID passport. So do we have to start articulating every right? Because the right to not be vaccinated against your will is not there is no right in the Constitution for that.
Right.
But it's one that we would all assume. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's really a conflict, an internal conflict, because there are things that I think the government has no business. Okay. If I want to homeschool my kid, I have the right to homeschool my kid. Just because the state says, the law, that all children go to school at 5, I shouldn't have to fight for the ability to homeschool my children. Okay. But at the same time, slavery. We needed an amendment to end such a vile thing. So it's really a conflicting issue to talk about, because you can see the positives and you can see the negatives. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to be an ongoing struggle.
No, it is an ongoing struggle.
Yes. And I do see judicial overreach.
Big time.
Yes. And that's dangerous. I think I really, I think we are at a crisis. Are entering into a crisis when one branch of government is trying to outdo another branch of government.
Yes.
And they're supposed to be separate. And
it's funny you're saying those words. I was thinking equals. They're co-equals.
Yeah.
They should be working in balance.
And that was the intention. But what you're seeing right now
is a grab,
is a judicial overreach.
Yeah, yeah.
But what they're also doing, and again, you've seen presidents do this. You've seen just look at FDR. I mean, the amount of rights that I believe that he encroached on, just with Social Security, just with the way that he set up his regime, the tax state that we have since 1913, the way that it's all been set up, because they've been told that they are allowed to put a Bill of Rights together. And by the way, if you look at some of the amendments, some of them are the government grants, the government shall grant. It's like, no, it's not shall grant, it's recognized.
See, in your
I like that. I like his terminology. The government recognizes.
Yes. And I think what you're seeing there is exactly part of the issue. When I look at this, I look at the slippery slope. Mm-hmm. Once you've gotten on it, you're there. It's almost like this when you're on a 9-pitch roof, mm-hmm. and you start to slide. That's it. You can lay your body flat on that roof, take all the granules in your arms and legs that you possibly want. But if you're too big, if you're too heavy, you're coming.
You can slide off the roof.
You're off.
Once you've started to slide.
That's it.
Yeah.
So when I look at these things, I always think about less government is good.
Yep.
But there's always a principle that comes into play for this. And I think we're kind of seeing it with this discussion. And that is this. Every abuse of freedom requires more law.
Yes.
Every abuse. Folks, you can take a look at any law that you want. Pick one. Why is there a law for that? It's because at some point somebody abused the freedom and the government felt compelled to step in and stop it.
Yes.
Correct. And as Family Low dropped this in the chat on PSB. The problem is in critical thinking, or I would say the lack thereof. They say that the slippery slope is a logical fallacy, and it isn't. And that's correct. I agree with you 100%. It's not a logical fallacy to say once you start to provide, in the Bill of Rights, in a way, big fan of the 10, things that are laid out there, in a way was to start down the slippery slope because we started amending and amending and amending and amending. And after a while, you get property tax, you get the Fed, you get, personal income tax, these things which are not constitutional.
And it leads you to that question. Where do we stop? Do we have to do this for every single right?
Correct. And that's where the question comes. And so that was Hamilton's perspective, is you're not going to be able to keep up after a while. And that's why the 9th and 10th Amendment look the way they do, is because you're not going to be able to keep up. And so the Federalists kind of snuck in the 9th and 10th and like, okay, guys, just saying, cap it right here. Cap it right here. I don't want to go further, but let's go ahead and kind of get into it, because I think the history is interesting behind the Bill of Rights.
And one more quick thing.
Go ahead.
I think for me, I kind of side with Hamilton on this one. But when Ronald Reagan ran for office, I was barely out of high school, and he was using phrases like limit government. Mm-hmm. And it didn't make any sense to me. And I stand here at 60 years old and I go, doggone, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And today, and I don't care if you're a Trump lover or a Trump hater, he's no different than any other president. They're going to try to grab that power that they think can help them with the policies that they want to put in place. Well, where did we get to all of that? And it's this issue of limiting government. Correct.
And again, someone in the chat, before we move on to the next piece here, said the government will one day become, I'll actually read that. That's a great one. It's a Thomas Jefferson quote from Rottweiler. The government will one day become corrupt and filled with liars and people who flock to one that tells the truth.
Good words.
Totally agree. I'm looking for the one that I just had up. They were talking about the state exerting ownership over children.
Oh boy.
Now, this is something that I need to research, but I've been told many times over the course of my life that your marriage certificate is in your marriage license is what gives the government the right. And I need to look into this. So someone in the chat, tell me if I'm wrong.
That's an interesting
thought.
thought.
The original purpose of a marriage license, what's been told to me, was that it gave the state ownership over the property of two plantations that were wed, and the offspring went to the state. In some of the states, that was the arrangement for slaves. And that's why CPS has that ability. That's what I've been told.
Now, I've been
I'm
told
not sure.
Okay, so it's very interesting because I have a coworker from Africa, and he was asking me, why do you need a license to get married?
Yeah.
And I said to him, well, a marriage license is protection. And I told him a lot of stories about men who, quote unquote, said, I'm going to marry you, and they get their friend to pretend that they're the pastor.
Yeah.
And it's not a legal union. And then she is left without any protection. He comes in, he swoops in, and then he's gone, and she has no legal way.
I haven't heard that argument, but in a common law court, she would have standing to pursue him.
Well, and then there's the children. So the marriage license, the way I've been instructed in it, is a protection for the man and the woman that says, yes, they are legally bound, and here's their responsibilities for the marriage and for the children.
But it should still be within the confines of the church. It was always done in the family Bible, in the witnesses of the church, and the church community was specifically responsible for that.
Okay, that's true.
When did it become licensed? So tell us in the comments, and we're going to get back to the Bill of Rights, because I think that it's an interesting thing.
It's really interesting
But
topic.
what you said, the church only has so much power, whereas the government can put you in jail.
We're going to get into some weeds here.
I think that we definitely
Back
want to
on
jump
track.
down that. Maybe next time you and I can do some research and we can come up with a point counterpoint.
I think that would be a
interesting
fascinating conversation.
So moving forward to Amendment 1. You guys know this one. You know it. You love it. It's why we're here, Mr. Producer. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people to peaceably assemble assemble rather, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances, the right to picket, the right to protest. And this comes from James Madison. This quote is cut 11. Conscience is the most sacred property of all.
Oh, boy.
When referring to this is what Madison said. Conscience is the most sacred property of all. If you remember, during the Revolution, you had, and sorry guys, it was a busy week. It was like an 80-hour work week for me. I wanted to have a few more historical things locked in on each amendment. But there are multiple stories of people speaking and being arrested by the Brits. And this was something that was fresh in their mind. There's no, and of course, 1620, we came here for the freedom to worship outside of the Anglican and Catholic churches because they were persecuting us. And that was something that was very much on the minds of these men. Amendment 2, Mr. Producer. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, this is often bandied about, especially by our liberal friends. They'll tell you, well, it's the regulated militia. Well, okay, so you have to define what a militia is. That's a group of citizens.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead, Charlie.
No, you keep going because
It's a group of citizens who are brought together and they use their own firearms to form a local defense. You have to define terms, not by your 21st century dictionary.
I'm sorry, what'd you just say?
You cannot define terms of something written in the 1700s through a 21st century dictionary.
Holy cow.
What?
We should probably take about 10 minutes and just let that soak in.
Yeah, Mr. Producer, you can't do that. Oh no. So, with that said, just a real quick quote from Patrick Henry, and this is from his "Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death" speech. Okay, sir. Go ahead and put it up there. Thank you. Sir, we are not weak if we make a proper use of those means which the God of nature hath placed in our power. The millions of people armed in the holy cause of liberty and in such a country as that which we possess are invincible by any force which our enemy can send against us. Does that sound like someone who thinks that AR-15s should not be legal? I'm just saying, I don't think Patrick Henry, I mean, and they had semi-automatic, they had repeating muskets back then. Okay, they had repeating muskets. The puckle gun was a cannon that was a rotary gun that you could boom, 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 boom. It was like a Gatling cannon. Okay, these are things that they owned. They even looked at purchasing for the Continental Army. They couldn't afford it because they couldn't tax and they couldn't do anything. But they looked at repeating muskets. So they knew about repeating firearms. They were aware of that. And I think it's ridiculous to say anything anything to the contrary of that. So Amendment 3, one that's not often talked about, but it's very important. No soldier shall, in the time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. Why was that important?
Well, my understanding is that the history of the English quartering their soldiers in houses, the father had no say, and the children or young girls had no protection.
And
maybe
not
even the
only-
family had no protection. I'm not saying that every soldier that went into somebody's house was disrespectful, but that if you were uncomfortable with this person, you thought they were a bad person, they're in your house and you have no control.
And I think, too, if you were to think about if this were not in place today, what would it be like? I mean, and if we could get political for a moment.
Sure.
So if you had Biden who was having to deal with a situation and the liberal left has their army going out, and what are they going to do? They're going to take out every house. They're going to just commandeer it, even if there's only one soldier in it, because it's property for them. They can do that. And that's the danger of something like that. You open not just one or two homes up, you open a bunch of homes up and puts a lot of people in very bad places.
Well, and you got to remember also the Brits forcibly conscripted prisoners. And so
Yes.
a lot of these people would commit assault on these women
Yep.
and children, and they were forced to be quartered in. So this is something that's fresh in their minds.
Yep.
And so the Third Amendment, not one that we typically think about a lot.
We don't.
But
we
it's
don't.
a blessing.
Yeah, it
It's a
is, and
new
that's my
idea.
point. That's exactly my point. Some of these are in here, and we don't understand the background for them, and we should be going back and looking at why did they do this,
Correct.
and we would learn a lot.
We would. And I think someone dropped this in the comment section. This is Dynamex. Illegals in hotels then get jobs and take away from local citizens. I think it's kind of interesting that it's a hotel is being conscripted, and yes, they're being
Oh,
paid.
wow. Great point.
But you look at what happens at some of these hotels; they are destroyed afterward.
Yes, they are.
So you could make an argument if some constitutional lawyer wanted to pick that up and say you're bringing in an invasion of illegals.
That's an interesting. It's a really interesting point.
I'd never thought about that, but someone dropped that in there. I don't know if that was your point, Dynamex, but I find that that's an interesting.
It
question
really
there.
is.
So, Mr. Steve,
Yes, sir.
how's it going?
Man, it is going fantastic, dude.
Glad to have
I
you here.
showed up late today. I was in a
We noticed.
meeting.
It's all good.
And sorry about. I apologize to everybody. I had a meeting I was in, and
We lost half
I
our
really
viewership.
couldn't-
We'll fire you later, and we'll
but-
dock half your pay.
yeah.
It's okay, Mr. Steve. I forgive you.
No, we'll add
Mr.
another
Producer
zero
forgives
on.
him. That makes everything better. Okay. So you got docked
Apologize
and then
for
add a
that, guys.
zero. Okay. So with that said, moving on to Amendment 4. Move to Amendment 4, Mr. Producer, if you would. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person's things to be seized.
Hey, New York and California, you might want to read this one.
How about Florida?
Florida, you might want to read this.
Look at the recent thing with Andrew Tate. Again, I haven't seen everything that they have on that, and I don't like Andrew Tate. I'm not like defending him. Don't make me defend Andrew Tate, Florida. Don't do that. I'm just saying, I really hope that those warrants were actually properly filled out, okay? Because otherwise it's an erosion of the body politic. Even if the guy is potentially, allegedly, don't know, maybe he's an abusive person outside of the consent, although some of these women consented. So I don't like any of that. However, you have to make sure that you have a reasonable, there has to be exigency. There has to be some reason.
Don't get on the slippery slope.
Don't get on the slippery slope, because once you do it to Andrew Tate, because we conservatives don't like what he does to women, next thing it's you're a Christian, you're doing it. And the conservatives, if we set the standard wrong, it's going to swing back and hit us, and
And then this is a place, guys, where all of us that are listening to this discussion, we have to stand the same way on both sides of the aisle, if I could word it like that. You can't just go and grab a Biden example and so on and so forth. You've got to make sure that you stand on truth,
On
not
principle.
not on a side. We're not on the side.
Correct.
We're on truth.
Correct. You look like you were about to say something. Okay. So just know this is very, very much historically from the perspective of you had a tyrant who was able to break in and take things without explaining how or why, and there was no jury, there was no judge who was responsible. By the way, again, judicial immunity only applies when they are acting within the confines of their oath of office. If they violate their oath of office, judicial immunity goes away. A judge in good standing, it says. Just putting that out there, but moving forward. To Amendment 5. Well, before we get there, actually, Amendment 4, sorry, keep that up. This is actually from James Otis Jr. Sorry, I want to say this. A man's house is his castle, and whilst he is quiet, he is as well guarded as a prince in his castle. This is kind of where we get a little bit of the first glimpse of what eventually became the Castle Doctrine many, many, many years later, centuries later. But this is the thought process. James Otis Jr. being another one of those men circulating in the Constitutional Convention.
But with the previous amendment, did we need that? Mm-hmm. I mean, if you think about it, if you have protections in your own home, why did I need to necessarily add that one? Go back to 4.
That is 4. So.
Oh,
James
I'm
Otis
sorry.
is
Okay,
referencing-
okay.
James
okay.
Otis is
My bad.
Jr. is referencing. That's a quote from him.
My bad.
Gotcha. No worries. And that is in his argument against writs.
Yep.
So, by the way, link in the description for all of these for at Further Every Day on YouTube and on Rumble. For anything we talk about, we try to remember to put all of our links so that you guys have them and you can do your own research. Don't trust us. Trust your own lying eyes, please.
And it's interesting how the Fourth Amendment has been extended to include not just your home,
But also your vehicle.
and also in some states your boat.
Which it should be.
Wow.
It should
Yeah.
be because people live on
Yes.
those things. I live
Yeah.
on a boat.
Not just a boat you live on,
You live on a
but
boat.
a
Live on a
boat that you fish on.
Well, I
Yep.
think if we're going to go farther, I mean, they just can't take your phone either.
Correct.
That's
That's the purpose. Is to prevent them from being able to
your
grab.
privacy. The government recognizes that we have rights to our privacy. They didn't grant us.
They recognize, and that's
They
the thing.
should recognize.
Or for those of you in England, privacy.
Yeah, which
We don't talk about that. Moving on.
They don't.
Yeah.
Amendment 5,
We
please.
don't talk. No.
Yeah, we don't talk about Bruno. Gen Z producer. Amendment 5, please. That's going to be.
I'm sorry, John Arthur. You know you love me.
Are you lost? 17. Thank you, Mr. Producer. We're off the rails. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. So this is where we plead the fifth. This is where we get that.
I was going to say that you've had 2 amendments so far that you can see. I can see why there's a here. This is another one.
Yeah, Amendment 5 is an important one. Not being compelled to give testimony against yourself.
Yep.
Is a very important thing. And by the way, just the more you know, can a 1099 be used against you in a court of law if you filled it out?
Mm-hmm.
Just
Wow.
food for thought. Food for thought. Just saying, tax code puts you in a very bad, unconstitutional place. Should not be the way it is. Just saying. That's why it's not constitutional. Also, double jeopardy here. You cannot be tried for the same thing twice.
And that right there is the one that comes back to me as I don't need a DA coming after me every which way. Failed here, let's try this one.
Mm-hmm.
Failed here, let's try this one. That's wrong. That's an abuse of power.
Correct.
If you can't do it in one, you probably ought not.
you haven't
to.
listened to enough crime. Stories.
Well, no.
No.
We got
you
to stand on truth. Don't get me in the crime
That-
thing.
Yeah, let me
That's
tell you something.
Oh, my.
Because we are limited how we can arrest somebody. We may know that person is really guilty, but we don't have the right evidence. So
we go ahead and just keep digging it out somewhere.
well,
That's why prosecutors need to be very careful.
Thank you.
That they only prosecute once, because then you have something like Trump, where they prosecute him
score.
for what's the right word?
Point John Arthur.
Procedural. Don't put me in that.
okay, so the ongoing story today, if any of you know of the Karen Reed story, who's been tried twice and had a hung jury and is going back for a third trial.
It's still in the same trial process. though.
But
yes.
it's a hung jury.
Yeah, it's
It
still the same
wasn't
process.
found not
one way or the
guilty
other.
or one way or the other. It's a hung jury, which is different.
It is. So the prosecution was not able to make their case beyond a shadow of a doubt. But
I think we need to clarify something here. What I'm talking about is there are times when you can charge a person with a particular felony. And you can say, if you're not careful, you go, okay, if I don't get him on this one, I'll charge him with this one.
yes, okay, you're correct.
And that's why we have situations where you're going into trial, especially as a jury person, and you're being told you can only find this way or this way. So don't sit there and go, well, they'll get them somewhere else if we don't. No, that's not how that works. You don't get to try them again.
Again, we
It's
have to do
done.
it once, and that's why prosecutors need to be very careful, because this whole procedural law issue that they're going after Trump for is eroding. It is eroding the basic rights
Yes.
of all of us. When you have those sorts of prosecutions, it reduces the credibility of the court.
It does.
And so they need to strike once, strike correctly, and be done. That's what they need to do within the statute of limitations, if that exists on any given crime. Now, someone dropped this, and I really like this one comment. It's over on Rumble for PSP. We get more laws because of the lack of morals. People need to be able to self-govern themselves. That's what Christianity teaches.
And you know what? I worded it one way and this person worded it this way. It's really the same thing. It's really,
our Constitution is designed for a
Yep,
moral people.
that's right.
It is suitable for the governance of none other.
yep.
Okay. So very, very important. Mr. Producer, can you get us Amendment 6, please? It's going to be 18. So no oopsies, sorry. Let me get that. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. This is such an important law, and,
Yes.
we're watching it erode right out from underneath our feet. Every traffic light camera that you see, I'm sorry, by the way,
Not a
every
traffic
speeding
light camera.
ticket, I'm going to freak some people out here. Every speeding ticket is an erosion of the Sixth Amendment and the purpose. Let me explain. You don't have a complainant. You only have an officer. The state is the complainant. Common law, the state was not allowed to be the complainant, because once the state is offended by whatever it dictates that you do. Now, if you drive 90 miles an hour through a school zone with a crosswalk with children, there is a victim. There's clearly a victim.
Or could be.
Right? Well, you have recklessly endangered children.
Here's what I'm saying.
By definition, you have recklessly endangered children.
But I like what you're saying there. If I, as a parent, saw that and I were a complainant,
And now you're a complainant.
and I'm saying John Doe was speeding through, that's
correct.
so.
But is it any different if you're speeding on the highway and you could be endangering innocent people?
It's not any different.
It's
What
not.
he's saying is,
What I'm saying, you need a complainant.
other than the state.
Other than the state, because once the state is allowed to be the complainant, the whole conversation about the Federalist versus the anti-Federalist on the Bill of Rights, this is a part of that conversation. Can we allow the government to be a complainant? Because once it is,
No.
now
Yeah,
it should
right.
be able to pursue based on murder charges, on things where the person is no longer able to speak. There should be some sort of okay. That's not what I'm not talking about that. I'm saying, can the government be the injured party? The answer is it shouldn't.
When there's no injured.
When there's no injured party, just the government has decided that it is the injured party. It's not the state versus a murderer. It's the state versus insert whatever issue right here. If you're driving recklessly and you have complainants saying, you cut me off, you almost ran me off the road, I spilled my coffee all over my spouse and my kids are screaming and you almost killed us. That's a crime, right? That's a crime that should be, attended to. But I'm just saying, you're eroding the Sixth Amendment every time you have a traffic stop. The way it's structured, I am pro-police. I am not an anarchist. I swear, I promise. But I do think that the policies that we put out there are definitely harming police's image.
So jaywalking, registrations of cars or inspections of cars, blah, blah, blah. I see where that argument comes from, and I think I would wholly agree with that.
Your inspection, your driver's license should be a something that's in the record as saying you are a safe person. It should not be required by the state to be injured. So what I mean by that is I think you getting a driver's license is a good idea, but driver's licenses were a fad in the 30s for commercial licenses. Then states started to exact that policy. What I would rather see under the age of 18 or 21, every parent sign a voucher saying, I am responsible for anything and everything that my child does while driving a motor vehicle. There'd be a lot less 16-year-olds driving 70 miles an hour with their phone in their hand.
Yes, but I also see this. I can also see it go the opposite way, where you've got irresponsible parents just letting ho-hum.
Guess what happens to those parents? They're
held
a
accountable
penalty.
for it.
So
That's right.
You can't have liberty without penalties for infracting upon your rights. Right? Rights come with responsibilities, and responsibilities come with penalties when those responsibilities are not.
If the penalty, I not necessarily think it's a bad idea to, give somebody a speeding ticket. However, I would say, or, require insurance and things of that nature. But I would say that if you were going to say the state can't do that, the penalties have to be so high that people would be too afraid to do that kind of stuff.
Sure.
What's the biblical reference for punishments? There's three things.
Yeah.
What did God say our three options for punishment were?
Capital.
Well, death was one of them.
Death penalty, restitution. Okay, so please let your 14-year-old drive their car into my 2013 Expedition evaluated at $10,000. Please hit my car so I can get 5 times restitution for my car. Please do it.
I drove when I was 14.
I drove all over the place when I was 5, 7, and 8. No accidents. Now, it was on private property.
Yeah, I drove at 14 on private property.
14.
And Charlie did too.
My dad drove triple sets
I drove
at 11.
14 on the state highways, but there was a reason for that. Though.
Steve, my dad drove triple
Did you get away?
triple 48 sets from the silo to the grain elevator across 20-something miles of farm road as an 11-year-old in a cab over Kenworth.
I had to drive over
120
the highest bridge in the South.
128,000 pounds was his biggest load. He was way over grossly because the grain got wet.
And I'll tell you what, as an 11-year-old, you don't think about that. You're not going to haul it down the road at 100 mile an hour. But
No, he had his license. He had his farm to market license. Okay, so everything I'm saying is not outside of
it's not.
scope. I think that we've just infantilized people, but all that to say, we've done it to the detriment of the Sixth Amendment.
Yep.
That's my only point. I'm not here advocating for a crazy revolution. I'm just saying you're eroding your Sixth Amendment rights. Seventh Amendment, Mr. Producer, it's going to be number 19. In suits at common law where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise reexamined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of common law. They just violated this for some. I'm trying to remember which one of Trump's trials there was a jury, and it was reevaluated. I'm trying to remember. This is a serious issue because once the jury has decided, they've decided. That's why prosecution better be on the ball. They better know what they're doing. Defense has everything to gain.
And the thing that I really fear on the issue of Trump is that I'm concerned that he'll go ahead, he'll finish out his term, he'll go off into the sunset, and some of these convictions are still sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll drop it, but they won't rescind anything. It'll still be there.
Correct.
So the erosion has happened, and it's going to continue.
Well, if he's a successful president, a Republican will probably be elected after him, and they'll pardon him for everything.
They cannot pardon him in the state of New York. Those
Excuse
were
me?
not federal cases. Those were
it's a
state
case.
cases.
So who knows what they'll do.
And but the point is, and that goes right to it, That's a true erosion
Correct.
just on a state level.
Correct.
And if you don't think that that's going to make it strong and hard into the federal level, you are crazy.
That's the reason why they did it that way.
That is exactly why.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because he wasn't going to be able to pardon himself.
So that
Correct.
can't not go to the Supreme Court.
No.
It was a state court.
Because that was such a crooked.
Yep.
So all of those people need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. The prosecution, the judge, all of them, they have violated their oath of office, in my opinion.
Yep.
Amendment number 8. Amendment number 8. This is going to be 20, buddy. Amendment 8. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted. I'm both a fan and I'm frustrated with this one.
Yeah, I'm not
think-
a fan and a fan.
I think throwing people who, touch small children into alligator pits would be awesome. I think we should do that.
We're seeing
publicly.
this abused right now and
Like
on the low
crocodile
bail.
pits, piranha.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Piranha's fun.
Keep going, Charles.
I
Ignore us.
think this one's being abused by our liberal friends on the low cash bail.
A low cash bail. No
Murder.
bail.
Yeah.
Murder and violent crimes are.
Out.
Yeah, that's because how many people are arrested for murder? They're released and then they go out and kill somebody else.
So pull that back up for just a moment.
So, Mr. Producer.
Yeah, when excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel. I'll be honest with you, this one, as far as I'm concerned, has no teeth in it whatsoever.
Well, it's hard to know what's excessive.
And that's my point. You cannot define the word excessive.
I mean, again, I think Fauci should be,
Hello?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think he should be beagled. He did all those beagles. We should do the same thing to him that he did the beagles, but that's another issue. I think it should fit the crime. But I appreciate it in that someone can't unduly impose something on me that is excessive. So we just have to take solace in that. Amendment number 9. Amendment number 9. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. You can hear the Federalists chiming in here. They're like, guys, cap it off here. No more, please. Stop. No more.
Yep.
Just stop. Constitutional amendments are not good. And by the way, they're not good. There are a lot of good constitutional amendments that came later, but they didn't have to be constitutional amendments.
And if you think about how difficult it would be to pass a constitutional amendment now,
Yeah, it's a 2/3 rule. So you have to have 2/3.
it would be hard.
It would be God ordained if it happened.
Yes, it would.
And the Constitutional Convention, just before anyone gets too far down the rabbit hole of, oh no, it's the worst thing ever, it might be. But you'd have to have meeting on one issue, and you're only allowed to debate one issue. The problem is, so there's a point counterpoint on the Convention of States, right, to do a constitutional amendment. The point counterpoint is this. The point is we need some amendments. We need to pull that together. The counterpoint is they have disobeyed and disregarded the Constitution so far. What makes you think that they wouldn't just sweep it all away?
No, that's a great point.
And so you need, what you really need, and Sugar Magnolia 78 on Rumble for PSB said it well, you need a Christian nation to do that. And really, if we had a Christian nation, we wouldn't be quibbling
here
over the laws. We wouldn't be trying to exact the law onto our fellow man. We would have won them. Now, I think that we do need to exact law. I'm not one of these people that says you can't legislate morality. You, by definition, you are. However, we do need to be winning the culture war. We absolutely need to be doing the good work in the church.
Yep.
Our theology needs to be straightened. Amendment 10. This is going to be cut number 22, Mr. Producer. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states, respectively, or to the people, i.e. the local and the individual. So again, you hear the Federalists chiming in, doing a double tap on this, giving two different points, but very much in the same spirit. Steve?
Yeah. The thing that I really find interesting right off the bat, it says the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution. So right there, it's saying that there's powers that are delegated to the United States only, but it's being delegated to it by someone. And who is that someone?
We hold these truths to be self-evident. That all
By
men are
God.
endowed by their Creator with certain
Exactly.
inalienable rights.
And then the others, all the others that haven't been delegated go to who? The states and the people. That's a lot of other rights.
You know,
Yep.
of all the amendments, I'm a fan of 9 of these. I think the 8th one is the one that bothers me the most.
It's definitely abused. I think it's abused. But I agree with you. Someone, Dearman, says this, and we're going to have a debate with our friend Melissa. We'll bring her on the show,
Ooh.
Dearman. So at some point,
You guys
we'll get her
need to be
on,
praying that Melissa will get on.
because she's busy with her PhD. She's actually working, hopefully, on writing some law in Texas, but she's a big fan of case law. And Dearman says this: case law is not common law. A trial must be determined on its own merits. Totally agree with you. I absolutely agree. I think that case law is part of the moral relativism that we're seeing in our nation.
Yep.
And how we say,
Yep.
well, it's the truth of the nation, it's the mores of the culture as opposed to the letter of the law. Totally agree with you on that. It is sad that case law has taken precedence. I don't mind case law. I think case law is valuable for cross-referencing, but it shouldn't be determining how judges rule. I think that's an act of
agree.
moral laziness.
I agree.
So, Hamilton or the anti-federalists, federalist or anti-federalist at this point, as far as adding in the Bill of Rights, do you have an opinion?
I'm going to lean toward Hamilton. I'm going to lean.
I am a strong leaner on Hamilton, even with the Bill of Rights there, in the strong case that you could make for several of those. I am just a person that believes in
Less law.
less law.
We have 20-something too many amendments.
Yes. Yes.
We have too many amendments. Steve, you weren't here for this part, but we were talking about the Federalists versus the Anti-Federalists. The Anti-Federalists wanted the Bill of Rights, whereas the Federalists said, look, we really don't need to put in
These
a
cases.
Bill of Rights, because what we're doing is we're sort of assuming that the government has the right. And the Federalist assumption was, if it's not written under the law, like Amendments 9 and 10, it's delegated to the states or to the individual, so don't even put it in. Whereas the Anti-Federalists said, look, the right to keep and bear arms, that needs to be said. Even if it's already understood, it still needs to be said. So,
We want to know, do you want the Bill of Rights or not?
or do you want the Constitution to say nothing about it and say, it's not even your business, dear federal government, to even think about people's rights. You are paving the roads, post office, war, and taxes for those things.
Can I do the Jeopardy? No, he's got to answer.
Oh,
Can
go
I
ahead.
do the Jeopardy tune?
Don't put Steve on it. He wasn't here. if you have thoughts, you're welcome to it. Otherwise, I'll just Madison. Okay, so you're on the Federalist side. I'm definitely leaning again towards the Federalists. I appreciate the Second Amendment, the First Amendment. I appreciate what they are, but I think that has led us to too many amendments to the Constitution. We are way down the hole, and I think it's been a huge issue for us as a people, that we think that the government, we can amend the Constitution, as opposed to changing the culture and as opposed to changing the laws and the actions of the executive. So I do lean towards the Federalists. I think the Bill of Rights was a mistake in the way that it's set. Not because those rights are wrong. I think that those are very much needed.
Yeah. Yes.
And they could have gone a step farther in saying that no law shall be construed based on race, religion, or creed, right? But, that we had to wait a few amendments before that in 100-something years. So, again, not against the amendments themselves, but the idea of putting it in there, I think, was a fail. I think we definitely messed up there. So, sad thing. Anyway, someone put this in the chat here. Someone says, so you say that the church should be involved with marriage, but Adam and Eve weren't before a church.
They were before God.
They were, and I'm going to make an argument. They were before the church.
Okay.
The bride of Christ is those who call him by themselves by his name. You had Adam and Eve. They made a covenant before each other. That's a church of two.
Oh, okay. I can see where you're
That
coming
is-
from.
That is a church of two. So I would make the argument that they were together. The reason
Interesting point, though.
Yeah, it is an interesting point. But I do think that the Bible, recording the marriage in the Bible, what the purpose of that is that they're saying, look, we're doing this in front of our minister, in front of our community, and our community is supposed to hold us accountable. Man's supposed to love his wife, and woman is supposed to love her husband.
And I was just going to go there. When you look at Adam and Eve, all the I want to say, not laws, but the rules governing marriage, they're laid out there. The man is supposed to cleave unto his wife. And so I can see the case you're making before the bride of Christ.
So I'm just saying, I think that's definitely
great point. Great question there.
It's worth mentioning, though.
Yep.
So okay, moving on to the next question, real quick. Does America have an identity? And if it has an identity, are there some things that we cannot allow into our borders? Are there ideologies that are harmful to the American experiment? And if so, how much freedom of religion and expression do they have?
Okay, so I think there's two questions here. So question one is, and this is where it shoots down any discussion from there on. You cannot set up your own government underneath a government.
Let's let them know what we're talking about first.
I'm sorry.
Let's let them know what we're talking about.
I'm running.
There's a new city that is being projected to be built in Texas. And some people are calling it a ethno-state or ethno-city. Let's go ahead and roll cut number 23, Mr. Producer.
Gubernatorial hate speech. That's what the attorney for the East Plano Islamic Center is calling Governor Abbott's latest comments. He's defending the center's planned community in rural Collin County. And tonight he's accusing the governor of, quote, utter nonsense and outright lies. Kevin Reese brings us the latest in the project near Josephine, Texas.
If he'll meet with me, I'll drive to Austin right now.
Dan Cogdill is a celebrated Dallas attorney, and today to Governor Gregg Abbott, he said this.
I think the legal phrase is bull.
Welcome to Epic City.
Since the announcement of a planned Muslim-friendly community near Josephine in Collin County, Governor Abbott has announced multiple investigations alleging criminal activities, rumors of Sharia law, maybe housing discrimination, all without evidence.
It used to be that something like this was called a cult, but today it's being called a community.
The results, a raucous and packed community meeting. And according to their newly hired attorney, multiple death threats.
They are afraid for their lives because of the falsehood that the governor's office has started. That's not Texan. That's not American. That's nonsense.
In his latest alert, the governor says the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality has found that the group has not received the proper permits for this project and that they must prove they are ceasing construction immediately. This is the project, this open field of 402 acres. There is no construction, and their attorney says there's a very good reason they don't have those permits. It's because they haven't even applied for them yet. Have you ever seen a full court press like this before?
No.
From the governor?
The only thing that makes sense to me, Kevin, is just pandering to a far-right base. And it's doing nothing but try to demonize faithful, religious, honest, hardworking people.
We have reached out to the governor's office for his response, but for now, Cogdill is giving him and any investigators his personal phone number.
Call me, 24/7, 365. We have an open invitation
To see and understand these still untouched 402 acres for themselves. In Josephine, Texas, I'm Kevin Reese.
His wife taught me how to sing and dance.
Really?
Kevin Reese's wife, the reporter. Awesome family. Cool guy up in Dallas. Awesome dude. But with that said, someone said America first. I got a question for you, Landry's. The Landry's. America first. What is America?
There's a question.
What is America? And so put that in the chat, folks. Put that in the chat. What is America? Because that is going to help you to define what's here. And make no mistake, I have an issue with a city that is predominantly or completely baked in and built in to be Islamic.
I have an issue.
I don't have an issue with Jew. I don't have an issue with Jews. I don't really have an issue with Hindus. Maybe. And the reason why I have an issue is because historically what I've seen, I have family who are Muslim. Some of my best friends are Muslim. That's not what this is about. But if you are building a city that is fully centered around a political ideology, Sharia. I'm not talking about my cousins and family who have their religion, they're apostates. Sorry, guys, I love you. But in any of these Middle Eastern countries, you would probably be killed if you were around the Shiites or Sunnis, right? Or depending upon who you are, you'd probably be killed. Okay, you'd be offed. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about people who want a Sharia law. They want to practice Sharia.
No, it's not. It's not
not allowed.
compatible with the Constitution. This is America, and I got news for you. I wouldn't be comfortable with that if a bunch of Christians got together and said,
I was going to say,
we're going to have our own school and we're going to have our own,
It's
city.
a question mark. It's a question mark even for that.
It makes me very uncomfortable because it's like what that woman said. We used to call this a cult.
It's
it puts
questionable.
people in a very. It could be a very difficult and maybe criminal situation where women or children are in this quote unquote city and there's no recourse, no protection for them, and they're forced to live a certain way.
Correct. And so
go ahead.
here's where I would differentiate it, and then I want to pass it off to you guys, you and then you. I would say that I have no problem with a city being built with a church in the center and saying, we're going to build a church and we're going to build a city. We're going to have a Christian school. We're going to have this. We're going to have that. What I have an issue of is if we said we're going to create a Christian state where we are going to rule the way that we want to with our own set of laws.
That's wrong.
That is not biblical. It is not biblical for a man to say, I'm going to create a church and I'm going to create a community and I'm going to rule the Levitical law way. I'm going to decide we're going to have the Mosaic law here in Dallas and I'm going to override the nation's laws in which I live. Romans 13, 1-7. Read it if you're questioning what I'm saying.
And that's what Sharia would do.
And the difference being one of these two is not like the others also. One of them, I'm sorry guys, I love my family members, but one of them, you just don't see the amount of women being taken against their will in the Western Christian nations. Not the way you see it in any place that was westernized and now is being taken over by Islam. It's not the same. These two things are not the same. It is not even close. That's why I said I don't care if it's Jewish, really, Hindu, atheist. I almost don't care if someone does whatever. It's if you're going to set up a law in a system, legal system like Sharia.
That's the issue. And by the way, I would love to call that attorney up and hop him on a plane with me. Let's go up to Michigan and let's do a couple of case studies up there, because this is going on up there and it's wrong. And now what's happening is it's starting to go into other places. Mm-hmm. This is not much different. And I want to be careful here. When we, Colony Ridge.
Yeah.
Okay. They're not necessarily doing that there, but here's what I want to bring out. These quote unquote no-go zones. Okay. Like you don't want to go there. These are the kind of places that do exist up in Michigan. Mm-hmm. This is the kind of thing that very well could happen here. So if we had something happening where you've got let's call it a militia.
Correct.
Being formed in this new
our own
community,
laws.
What recourse do we have? Uh-oh.
Yep.
Now we're in a bind.
There's no room for a second law.
So I appreciate attorneys because attorneys fight for the rights of every person, no matter which side you're on. But his zeal tells me he's got some educating that needs to be done.
I don't think so. So he either does not believe the claim that Sharia law is being considered here.
Yeah,
I'm sure they're not saying that.
They're not.
Someone let it out. Someone let it out. And if you actually look on the discourse online, I had this one clip ready. There was one. There's a guy. He's a friendly ex-Muslim on YouTube. Look him up. The friendly ex-Muslim, interesting guy. He went and looked at all of the tweets with Gregg Abbott. And he was looking at all these Muslims in the tweets. And one of them says, you have no idea what you're talking about. There's no way that we would do Sharia here, blah, 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 blah. And then a few comments down, he goes, I can't wait. The same guy, the same commenter responds to someone else and says, I can't wait to force Sharia upon you when we grow larger.
There you go. There you go.
Some of these people, not, again, my family and friends, great people. I love them. But there are people who are Sharia supremacists. It's no different than if you had a bunch of skinheads getting together.
Yes.
And saying,
That's right.
You know, I like the blacks, blah, 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 blah. You know, if that was forming, I think Gregg Abbott would and should say, wait a minute, you're going to form a white ethno-state centric,
or even if it was all
group.
black.
Or all black. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. This, and Steve, I know you wanted to say something.
But Nikki's got words.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, what you said earlier, you cannot come in and form your own state underneath our Constitution.
Correct.
Our Constitution recognizes everybody. There is no law that you can set up on your own and say, okay, in this area in the United States, we're going to practice this or we're going to practice that. And what I said, even if a Christian church wanted to do it, I don't feel that is even biblical because
With their
we're
own laws, yeah.
Yeah, we that it wouldn't even be a biblical thing because we're called to go out into the world and be witnesses. We're not called to be inclusive and just stay with our own people and do our own thing. And that would scare me because of some of the very legalistic.
Yeah, there are
That
some
would-
crazy
that would
people
scare me.
who call themselves Christians. That
Yeah.
they do exist.
You know, what you had mentioned about a cult with the Christian thing, you know, I mean, look at the thing with the Ruby Ridge thing, how it kind of turned out to ATF called it a little cult, the Jim Jones thing, and how people were calling them a cult.
Mm-hmm.
They
Now,
were a cult.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
which
were.
they were. And I've got a friend who lives in Michigan, middle part of Michigan. He talks about all the Sharia stuff that goes on there, and the towns and the no-go zones. The police don't even go there at all. They don't even go
See, and
anywhere.
what are we
in
going
there.
to do about that?
And we allow this, and even in Texas, we have zones that are no-go zones for the cartel. Okay, been here, done that. There are places in Texas where, and this is where I say illegal immigration, anything that prevents people from assimilating is not American. It doesn't
Correct.
belong here. Get rid of it. We have
Agreed.
illegal immigration here in Texas. There are places where they won't even send an ambulance in for someone who's injured or dying or dead unless there are 2 to 4 police car escorts or a bomb squad. That is literally where they're going because the cartel sets up this little state, this little ethno state, if you will.
Colony Ridge.
Yeah, not good. Not good. We don't need it. Someone, Sugar Magnolia on Rumble says Sharia law violates our Constitution. No, they need to follow our Christian values to live in America. America's a Christian nation. Agree. Tim Moole, all cities should be constitutional.
Yes.
They should be constitutional-based cities. Radiant Seas, thank you for donating to the PSB. We're a Christian-based nation, and we will be punished for allowing these non-Christian foreigners to boldly circumvent the U.S. Constitution, Bill of Rights, and they have ended up usurping our Christian culture, faith, and the good things that have come out of it. I cannot agree with you more, Radiant Seas. Thank you for the donation to PSB. You're about to say.
No, I totally agree with this. You know, I will say this. If America wants to sell some land to the Muslims,
No.
and the state agrees, no, watch this, and the state agrees to it, okay. Now, we can take you over at the end of all that, but to me, there's no way that this can happen without the federal government saying, we're okay with that, and then
Yeah.
the state saying, we're okay with that.
I think it's a private purchase of land. And Cascade asked this, but I do think so. That was my confusion with you, because Cascade brought this up. One problem: why do we allow foreigners to purchase parcels of land? That's a really good question. I think
I don't think we should
American.
allow them.
You should be an American citizen, or you should be registered as a foreign agent. And
Yep.
and you need to fit certain principles. There's no reason why China should be able to purchase.
Hello?
The Arabs should not be able to purchase land. That is something that, look, I am not xenophobic. I am bad actor phobic. Okay, I don't care. You know, look, I'm not xenophobic. I don't care if you're a different skin color. Really don't care. I care of, are you a bad actor? Are you going to live within the bounds of the Constitution? Because my fathers fought and died for this land. My mother's great ancestor was Josiah Bartlett, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. we fought for the land. We came here on the Mayflower. We fought, you know, my mom's side, my dad's side's Italian, but they came, they fought, and they lived through all of that. You're welcome to come here, but these people died and lived for a constitutional republic, and it is time that we keep that. We need to keep that. And sorry, I know that doesn't sound very nice. It's not very inclusive. Guess what? America's awesome. To be awesome, you kind of need to have exclusivity.
Nobody said you couldn't have a school. Nobody said you couldn't have a mosque. Nobody said that.
No Sharia.
Nobody said you couldn't buy a house. What we're saying is you're not going to be inclusive and set up your own little state within the United States. Our people, our soldiers, our ancestors fought for this land and fought for the Constitution. And every person that walks on this land is going to be under the Constitution, not any other law.
Correct. No Sharia. It's in Dearborn. We've seen it happen. We've seen Christians be stoned in Michigan. Okay. That is stuff that is happening when you have an aggregate of people who are Sharia law observance. That's what you see. Don't want that. You can go back to hell.
So
the Middle East and enjoy that where you came from.
John Arthur, people might be asking, well, why isn't the government doing anything? And would you say it's probably because nobody's going to say anything? You're hearing this on the outskirts, but nobody in that area is going to come and tell the government.
I think that's a really good question. And I think the answer to that is probably twofold. Number one, if you do it on a local level, there's probably some fear of retribution. And rightly so. I mean, if you've got Muslims going, I'll be coming for your family members. This is where people, and I hope everyone understands this. Freedom has a currency.
Yes.
And the currency is not greenbacks. The currency is the stuff flowing through your veins. You are not going to keep freedom without spilling blood. And if we are not willing to sacrifice that blood, and this is how I'm answering that question, if we are not willing to sacrifice the blood to go in and clean up those places, this is what's going to happen.
So I'd rather circumvent the whole situation and not allow a
political
good to movement to set up laws.
Yep.
Look, I don't care if you're just moving in and you want to build a school and you want to build some suburbs and you want to develop it, God bless you. Do whatever you want. The moment you say Sharia observance as a city, bye. No, sorry.
Nope.
And look, I love everyone. I have no hate or ill will towards Muslims. Like I said, I can't, just putting it out there. A lot of my family and friends are Muslims. Don't have a problem with you at all. I have a problem with Sharia as a law in the United States. It's just not the law. So moving on to something else, different thought, switching gears, changing lanes. Speaking about phobias, they say if you bring up this topic, you're fat phobic. Let's talk about the body positivity movement for just a moment. The body positivity movement. How's that for a segue? You like that, Charlie? This is painful, right?
He's positive this is his body.
Yeah. I'm positive that this is my body. Oh. No, you know what? That's actually healthier than what they do. Because now, new in the news, recently, we have a guy who's been making the rounds as a fat personal trainer. And he trains people. Just listen. I know, right? He's a fat personal trainer. Mr. Producer, if you could pull this guy up. He's making the rounds on Instagram, and it's interesting. Yeah.
If you're a fat personal trainer, you should be executed.
One of my favorite things is when the trash takes itself out. Hi, I'm Roy. I am a fat personal trainer. And I've been working in the fitness space for like 7 or 8 years now. And
if I ever decide to lose this weight and I go into a gym and see a personal trainer built like me, I am going to go home, cry while eating a burrito. Because this inclusivity stuff got people losing their ever-loving minds. This is like saying, hi, I'm your sobriety coach, but I'm also getting high every night.
So that's the reaction to him. Let's actually hear a whole video from him, from the trainer himself, not the two guys on either side. I wanted to throw that in there just to kind of spice it up. But let's actually hear from the guy. Go ahead.
So if I'm honest, I think I'll be
he's proud of this body. And if you can read this, just do me a favor, Mr. Producer. Lower that volume for me, huh?
How can I get off this?
Yeah, okay. Good. We're going to kill it. If you're a personal trainer,
Skadoosh Kadeem, get this crud off my screen.
and I
love it.
Okay.
My body can function just as well as it could if it were slim. I can do push-ups, I can do sit-ups. The end goal doesn't have to be weight loss, and that's okay. This guy's a personal trainer. So I just want to pull that out and say, I feel like it's a self-parody at this point, the body positivity movement. Like, it's beyond parody. And I know you have thoughts, Ms. Nicki.
Well, I don't want anybody to feel bad about themselves. I don't want them to be depressed. I don't want them to be comparing themselves to other people. The only thing that, and of course, I'm certainly have a weight problem too, is the only thing to be concerned about is your health, how weight will affect your health. And he was very active and able to do moves and stuff, which is good for him, is good for his health. So I think just people should be comfortable who they are, but we should always be working toward how can we be healthy, because the consequence when you're older, because Charlie and I are older, your body will start limiting what you can and cannot do. And it's not fun. It's not fun.
But just imagine going. we all change, and as we grow older, it's harder. But imagine going to someone, and this guy at one point says, "I don't even want to. If you want to lose weight, I don't even want to train you." So my question is, A, what's your T-list? What's even your purpose then? Like, what are you doing? You're basically stroking yourself and saying, I'm this, I'm that, I'm beautiful. And I think that really comes down to the main issue between the materialist and the non-materialist. And I'll explain what I mean in just a second. But I want to look at people who are sort of a great example of a celebrity who is a victim of this and is kind of coming through it through the other side is Meghan Trainor. Do you guys remember Meghan Trainor?
The name is
She became very popular when her song All About That Bass came up. Mr. Producer, if you could pull this up, this is cut number 26.
It's not going to be the song, is it?
No.
Okay.
No, we're not going to get copyright struck today. 26, please.
What's the matter, Mr.?
Yours is not the reason why. Yours is but to, play the thing. But I promise you, it's just this. So this is Meghan Trainor before on the left, and then now she's actually slimmed up quite a bit. She's lost, it's like 100-something pounds. Now, if you're reading the verse all about the bass, I'm bringing booty back. Go ahead and tell those skinny B words that, no, I'm just playing. I know that you think you're fat, but I'm here to tell you every inch of you is perfect from the bottom of the top to the top. That's 10 years ago she wrote that. Today, this is what she recently said in an interview I believe it was this last week. No, I don't look like I did 10 years ago. I've been on a journey to be the healthiest, strongest version of myself for my kids and for me. I've worked with a dietitian, made huge lifestyle changes, changed exercise with a trainer. And yes, I've used science and support. Shout out to Monjaro. It's like Ozempic.
Yep.
To help me after my second pregnancy. I'm so glad that I did it because I feel great. You know what I never hear? Thank you, Mr. Producer. I never hear these body positivity people when they lose the weight. I never hear them say, "Oh, I feel so terrible now that I'm
Right.
healthy and that I feel good." You don't hear that. Instead, you hear, "I'm happy that I made the change."
Yep.
So my question, and again, I'm not against fat people. I that's not what I'm saying. But if you're here and you're saying that I'm a personal trainer and I'm not even going to train you if you want to lose weight, what is the assertion that's being made under the hood of the mind there? And just think about that for a second. Tell me in the comment section what you guys think the assertion is, because I'm going to lay out what I believe this is. I believe this is a spiritual malaise. Because you have the materialists, the materialistic monists, if you will. These are people who believe that there is no spiritual. We are goo to zoo to you. We are just descendants from the monkeys and from the amoeba before us, and there is no supernatural, there is no spiritual. But they are humans with souls, and to the contrary of their belief, they know that they have intrinsic value. Deep in their heart, they know that there's something valuable. But if their body is what's valuable, and it's infinitely valuable, and I am no more or less valuable than Miss Nicki, who's no more or less valuable than Charlie. We all know these things. We have these tucked into our heart. But if you're a materialist, that doesn't make sense, because if I'm just the squishy meat bag me, I am not as valuable as Michael Phelps or Michael Jordan Do you understand what I'm saying? I am not as valuable if I am valued by the meat bag that I inhabit as a dualistic creature, not a materialistic monist here. I am a spiritual dualist. I believe that there's a flesh and there's a physical, and then there's a spirit, a metaphysical. When you understand that there's a metaphysical, you understand that the flesh is different than the spirit. If your assumption is that you are just the meat bag that you inhabit, then that has the intrinsic value that you assume and you pull over from, you kind of borrow from the dualistic worldview. The problem is that it's incoherent. And so just enjoy your body, enjoy yourself. You are the most important thing, and your pleasure is the highest value that you can derive. It's a very utilitarian mindset. It has very little to do with the spiritual. And I think that this is where we kind of see our liberal friends fall on their face philosophically.
I want to say that Rush Limbaugh did kind of a segment on this very topic, and this was years ago. He kind of saw what was going to happen with this. I want to go try to find that because it's really
be worthwhile.
I left the meat bag behind, and I was a bunch of different amino acids that crawled out of a slushy pool.
Yeah.
And crawled along for about 3 miles, and
but
came up,
natural
talked
if you
to
think
Charlie and said, "Hey, you amino acid over there,
you're fine.
What's
you're
that other
just
amino acid you got over there?" He says, "Hey, this is my gal."
Actually, this is a very interesting topic because
thank you, Mr. Producer.
We have
Please.
RFK now wanting to make us healthier. We are one of the most obese nations in the world. We have a lot of food.
Yes.
Now, is what he's saying that our food is very unhealthy for us? Maybe it is. Maybe the way that we go about, it's not that you overeat that you're having. Maybe it's what's in the food. And the reason I say that is because I was listening to Elon Musk, and he was saying that he uses science to keep his weight off. Well, I really want to know, what is that science? Let me in. But some of the things that we have in our food, they don't have in other countries.
Correct.
So we are the most obese. And another thing,
most autistic, and the most, it goes down the line.
So I'm really curious to see.
I think it'll help
what he brings out. But also remember, 80 to 85% of all people who lose weight will put that weight back on.
Correct. There's a lot of yo-yoing that happens.
And a lot of times you'll put more weight back on afterwards.
So that's why it's important, I think, to seek out truth, because once you realize that you have intrinsic value as a person, and I was speaking to someone recently who said that she, had issues with her self-image because of her body. You're intrinsically valuable because you're an image bearer. Correct. Like the dollar bill in your pocket. If I pulled a dollar bill out of my wallet right now, this has the dollar bill has no intrinsic value. Okay, the dollar bill, and I'm going to pull one out because I think it's actually worth feeling it and looking it out. So if you have a dollar bill, okay, for those of you in audio, I'm holding a dollar bill. This has no intrinsic value. It's a piece of paper and plastic. Why does this have value? Because it is an image bearer or a conceptual bearer of the value that's supposed to be in Fort Knox, although we don't know if there's any gold left in Fort Knox. Also, of course, we're now on the debt standard, but that's another issue. Point being, it is a representation, it is a shadow of something bigger. We, as humans, are image bearers. We derive our value from the thing which gives us or bestows upon us that value. When you have someone who's talking about their body positivity, they're worried about their image, this is the best time to bring out your apologetics work and say, you're more than your body. And you're more than your body because there is someone who is bestowing upon you by creating you within this infinite value. This infinite value. The value is the same as the one who's giving it, and he's bestowing that onto you as a son or a daughter if you will take it. That is, I think, something that our culture sincerely is missing. And we on the right, we can laugh at these people. That's fine. It's all fun, well, and good to laugh. But I do think that there is some suffering that we can actually allay and we can actually help with if we tell people, look, you're more than your body. You have a spirit and a soul. The fact that you yearn to be intrinsically valuable says that you're more than a body. And I think we really should be finding our identity in Christ.
Yep.
And not in our community, whether it's the fat community, the LGBT community. You notice that the appeal is always to the community. We talked about this a couple episodes ago. The appeal is always to the community when it comes to these libs, because they're being held in, they're held captive by this entrenched idea that the value comes from the corporate, as opposed to the individual that's bestowed upon them by a God that loves them.
And the interesting thing about those liberal people, they have put their value in so many different communities that sometimes they conflict and they don't know what to do. I mean, if you think about it, why was Joe Biden president? He's a white man. He's at the top of the totem pole. What are you talking about that you believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion? He's still a white man at the very top. You're speaking out of both sides of your mouth.
Correct.
I will just have to say on body positivity here. This year I am going to have 14 grandchildren. I need a large lap. There's a lot of grandchildren to hold.
Hey, no. Okay. On that note.
Well, next segment.
I'll tell you what.
And Steve is tongue-tied on this.
Next segment.
Having 14 grandchildren is
a blessing.
Yes.
Yeah,
blessing
that
from the Lord.
is something
I am
else.
taking
You are
on,
blessed.
I am blessed, but I am taking on surrogate grandparents at Christmas time who wants to buy a present.
I'll tell you what.
I think that's a
is
good idea,
blessing.
economically.
14 grandchildren.
That's right.
Man.
So speaking about economic blessings or curses, some of us lost 25% of our net worth this last month. Let's real quick talk about Liberation Day. And don't sell just yet. I can't give you advice, but I'm just saying the general wisdom in not selling is probably still relevant here. Probably don't sell just yet. I'm just suggesting maybe you hold, because it's interesting. But we'll tell you why. I'm not giving you legal advice or financial advice. I'm not qualified to do that. Please don't think that I'm doing that. But I do want you to play Liberation Day. Cut 27, Mr. Producer, please. For those of you who didn't watch this.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day, waiting for a long time. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. And starting tomorrow, the United States will implement reciprocal tariffs on other nations. It's been a long time since we even thought of that. For nations that treat us badly, we will calculate the combined rate of all their tariffs, non-monetary barriers, and other forms of cheating. But we will charge them approximately half of what they are and have been charging us. So the tariffs will be not a full reciprocal. I could have done that. Yes, but it would have been tough for a lot of countries who didn't want to do that. I'd like to see the chart if you have it. If you look at that, China, first row, China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. So it's 67%, so we're going to be charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%. I think, in other words, they charge us, we charge them less. So how can anybody be upset?
Thank you, Mr. Producer. It's so well. They could be quite upset, and there's actually there's a give and a take here. Obviously, China's not charging us that much in tariffs, but there's currency manipulation. And there's a few other things that's going on there. Okay, there are a few things that are occurring, and the way that you calculate this, there's a formula that's running out there. It's currency rate against the United States plus, obviously the tariffs, and there's 2 or 3 other factors, and then add 10%. You know how we know adding 10%? He's taxing the penguins on the island that no one lives on.
Yes.
So why is Trump doing that? Well, there's a couple of reasons that have been foisted. In a moment, we're going to listen to Scott Bessent, actually from the horse's mouth, the guy who's largely behind a lot of Trump's groundwork on this. But I do believe that this is an interesting ploy. It's a little scary, though, because if this fumbles, it's going to be very, very hard 2026 election, and it will be hard on the American people. But if he wins, he's going to win big. So we need to be on our knees, because here's what's happening. Post World War II, there was a new economic order set up. And I'll leave in the description a great link from a guy, Marcos and Money. Okay, I gave it to everyone here for their pre-show so they could watch it. It's 20 minutes. I thought about playing the whole video here. I just can't. For all the reasons. However, it lines up with everything else that I've heard and what I've seen. The post-World War II economic order was set up so that America was going to become the reserve currency, and we were going to basically leverage all of the countries that we had bankrupted through war and whatever, and create a set of free trade. But America was going to be on the short end of the stick with tariffs. Trump's coming out right now and saying a couple things. His people have come out and said a few things, rather. Trump's been rather opaque, but his people have let out, and Scott Bessent over the years have basically said, we're going to use Doge to cut the deficit by half $500 billion every year. We are going to leverage reciprocal tariffs on those who are enemies, bad actors. We are going to negotiate new trade deals that are more as neutral as possible with good actors. And then there's going to be kind of like a yellow zone. So Scott Bessent talks about a green, a yellow, and a red basket.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
So he's going to put them in each one of those, and the tariffs are going to be reset. It's not what it looks like right now. And I want to hear more from Scott Bessent himself real quick, but I just thought it'd be important to tag this on the back end of the show before we do Nicki Knows Facts. So go ahead, Mr. Producer, cut number 28, please, from the horse's mouth.
Can you fill in some of the blanks on how you see this playing out?
Sure, Joe. And I don't think it's a radical change. It's just a much needed course adjustment. And when we go back and look at what's happened, there's a new paper out called the China Shock. And it talks about what happened post-2004, that some of the communities recovered, but the workers never recovered. And that it was much more devastating on a human level. And what we are trying to do is make free trade fair trade, because the trading systems have become incredibly imbalanced. You see it with these gigantic trade deficits that we run. You see it with the big surpluses that other countries are accumulating. So we're looking at tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers, currency manipulation, government subsidies, and in the EU, some of these gigantic fines that they're putting on our tech companies just because they see a big pool of capital. And we're going to push back on those. And at the end of the day, President Trump's been saying tariff is his favorite word. I think reciprocal may be his second favorite word. And we're going to put this at the feet of our trading partners on April 2nd. We're going to come out, talk about who's a good actor, who's a bad actor, to what degree they have put up barriers against us, and it'll be a choice. Either they can drop all the market manipulation and things like that they've done that have hurt American workers. And if they do that, then we could have more frictionless trade, or we'll put up the tariff wall, we'll collect a lot of money, and we will make the system fairer.
So there's the Scott Bessent side. And again, I left that explained by Marco, Money and Marco. I'll actually put a link in the description at Further Every Day on YouTube and on Rumble. 20-minute video by Money and Marco. Really good video if you want to see the history behind this. But the argument is we need a more complex structure of tariffs. The concern from a lot of the neocons and some of the general wing conservatives like Ben Shapiro is this: China is sitting there with open arms. So hopefully Trump does quick work and prevents a new access shift. So there's one of two ways I see this going. Trump wins all of these negotiations and he manages to get us ahead of China, because if you look at the whole issue with China's trade, and then I want to get to you, Steve. China's trade with the United States, we've had tariffs for a long time, but China has laundered steel, aluminum, all sorts of parts through Canada and Mexico by funding multi-hectare industrial parks. These are enormous facilities that are producing Chinese, effectively made products with a Mexico or Canada stamp on them. And they're effectively paid for and made by the Chinese. The reason why we're taxing the penguins is we can't allow China to shift to Vietnam like they did before with shirts and some of the other things. We can't allow them to shift to some other nation. We have to start a new world order on our terms, one that is actually more free than what the new world order wants, one that is set up for as frictionless trade as possible, using Scott Bessent's word. So that's the designed outcome. The alternative is that BRICS gets larger, a lot larger, and a lot of our former allies or people who aren't particularly aligned one way or the other turn on America. So be in prayer for our president. I think that he's trying to do a good job, and he's trying to do basically the impossible. If he accomplishes it, he'll be known as the most transformative president in 100 years.
Agreed.
Steve.
Yeah, Bessett's a pretty sharp economy guy. And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't he associated with Soros in helping to bring down the Greek economy?
I don't know.
If I'm not mistaken,
you're going to have to bring that up with facts. So I don't have that, Steve.
Yeah.
But
I will say though, the one other thing to add on to this story.
He's a big hedge fund guy. Been for a long time.
Breitbart is reporting that 50 countries are already coming to the table to negotiate.
Correct.
So
Israel, Mexico, across
India,
the board.
and so
Canada.
you're talking about a lot of major players here. But the other thing too that I want to bring up is that the word that I'm hearing in the media is that China is in a very precarious position, and if there was ever a time to try to affect a change on China, right now is it.
Yeah.
Through this.
Because there is some instability in China, and right now we're right at the edge of potential war between China and Taiwan. You look at everything that Trump's doing. You look at Pete Hegseth. He said, "Our eyes are on the Indo-Pacific theater right now."
Yeah.
He said that to he and Vance both said we're looking at China as a real threat. Everything that they're doing right now is twisting the knife in China's back.
Yep.
And I think that that's ultimately going to be the most valuable thing. So just be in prayer for our president. I think that we're actually in a good potentially a good space.
Yep.
If Trump can just land this, it's going to be hard.
I think it would be 6 months to a year.
At least. It better be cleared up before the midterms, though.
Yes.
And the Dems are going to do everything they can to tank the economy, because if they can, then it's going to be blamed on Trump and the Republicans, and we are going to have a very, very bad 2026 primary. I am hopeful. I think the president is trying to do the right thing, and I think he needs to do something. This is one of the most dangerous gambits I've ever seen in recent political memory.
Kind of reminds you of the tough decisions with Lincoln.
It's on that scale.
I think it sounds to me like it was something that has to be done.
Something has to happen.
Or like Elon Musk said, we're on the verge of bankruptcy. We really are.
Correct.
We don't understand that because we live so comfortable. But we are really in deep in debt, and we have to stop this trade deficit. We have to stop this corruption. These things need to be done.
So, totally agree. Last note from you, Nicki. Let's go into Nicki Knows Facts, because we're at 2:44 Central, God's time.
We are going to talk about the Civil War.
So, hold that up, Mr. Producer. Which what?
The Civil War, which actually happened 1861 to 1865. Now, that was 160 years ago. And so what does that have to do with anything today?
Throw it up again, Mr. Producer. I thought we had the setup. Go ahead, 29.
I can't see. Yes.
When did the last Civil War widow pass away?
Well, you're going to be surprised. So hang on. Let's
so set it up.
I'm going to set you up here. So during the Civil War, 3 million men from both sides fought during the war. 750,000 of those men died. That's 25%. That's really high. Well, the women left behind, those were called Civil War widows. Now, there are men that survived that war, and some of them actually remarried. And this is the interesting part of when they remarried and what happened. So I'm going to share a little bit with you. The last Civil War widow actually died in December 2020. Now, what are you thinking?
December 2020.
Okay,
that's not possible.
160 years ago.
There's no way that's possible.
Go ahead.
Okay. So Charlie says not possible. She was 101. And what happened, her name is Helen Viola Jackson. Now, she was a neighbor to a man named James Bolin. He was born in 1843, served with the Union Army, and he died in 1939. Well, her father, Helen's father, asked her to go over and do some chores for this elderly man. Well, he couldn't pay her. So what he made the suggestion was, I will marry you, and then you can collect my pension.
What?
Yeah. So we were talking about this with our 15-year-old granddaughter the other day, and Charlie says, why would a 17-year-old girl marry a 93-year-old man? And my granddaughter said, she wanted a sugar daddy.
Boom. That's correct.
But anyway, so they did get married.
She's 15 now?
She is.
She's 15, yes. And so at 17, she married Mr. Bolin. And they actually wrote it in the family Bible. But she went home and she didn't tell anybody. And she did not ever remarry. So they thought in 2008 that the last Civil War widow had passed away. And her name, Ryan, you can pick that up there with Maudie, there in the middle. That's Maudie and her husband, William Contrell. And I believe in the I don't have my paper with me, but she was 20 and he was 88. And he was
88.
Yes. And they got married. He died just a few years later. Okay. But she didn't die until 2008, and they thought she was the last one. But Helen.
Back up, bud.
Helen went.
On the right.
Yeah.
Helen Viola Jackson on the right.
She, in 2017, she went to her pastor. And she let her pastor, she had never remarried, but she's going to her pastor and she's planning out her funeral. She's 97 years old or 98. And she tells him about marrying James Bolin. And he goes, wait a minute. Do you understand? And he realized the significance of what she was saying. And they went and she started collecting a Civil War pension for being a surviving widow.
At what date?
2017.
A surviving
widow.
Civil War widow being sent a pension.
Yes.
In 2017.
So she got approximately 36 months, give or take a few,
of pension money.
Yes. But one of the reasons she did keep it quiet, because he died 3 years after they were married, she didn't want to ruin his reputation or her reputation, because it would look really funny at that point.
It would.
But also in 2020, Irene Tipplet received a Civil War pension until her death of 90 years. She died May 31st, 2020. Now, she was the daughter of a Civil War veteran, and his name was Mose Triplett. But Mose was 83 years old, and his wife, Alida, was 34 when Irene was born. These guys, I'm telling you.
They married a bunch of young ladies. They were robbing the cradle.
I guess. I'm those that survived really survived.
Thrived.
That's all I can say. But the story of Mose Triplett is very interesting because he was a Confederate soldier, and he was in the hospital, and he escaped from the hospital, and he went over to the Union side and started fighting for the Union forces. And it was just a few days from the Battle of Gettysburg. And during the Battle of Gettysburg, his Confederate company that he was with, 93% of them were killed during that battle. And he had just left the battle. So in 1862, a year after the Civil War started, they came up with the general pension law. And this system was set up for Union soldiers that survived the war. And there's a couple of amendments that included wives and dependents, and the pensions were based on how long you served, your rank, and things like that. So you can go back and you can read that. But one of the things I did want to bring up here was that the Confederate soldiers were not included
In their pensions.
in these pensions.
Who paid for their pensions?
So they either had to rely on their state or local governments for their pensions. In 1956, I believe, which is close to 90 years after the Civil War, they did start including Confederate soldiers in this pension program, but not before that. So those are two little interesting.
This has been Nicki Knows Facts.
I think everybody is dead, but these guys, some of them, 80s and 90s.
88 years old marrying a 34-year-old. That's wild.
Well, the Maudie that died in 2008, she was 20 and he was 88.
20 and 88. That's
yeah.
crazy.
It is crazy, but interesting.
It is interesting.
So
do you think we have enough time for Chapter 7?
What time?
It's 2:51. Do you want to do it?
Oh.
We can do final thoughts, or we can do Chapter 7.
Let's do final thoughts, because I'd rather cover that in really good
so next week, guys, it is the last thing we're doing, but we want to make sure we do it well. So the Great Divorce, Chapter 7. Some of us were getting in late, some of us this or that. We were kind of a little bit off today, but the Great Divorce, Chapter 7, is a great piece of literature. It is about it is an allegory of by C.S. Lewis, of Chronicles of Narnia fame, Screwtape Letters, etc., of the great divorce of humanity as people go to heaven and people choose hell. And it is a very interesting fiction that is well written. We will be getting into Chapter 7 next week because we want to make sure that we actually spend the time. Now, I do want to go ahead and respond to a couple of comments real quick here. This is from Radiant Seas. It said, hey, thank you. Wait 1 second. Thank you, Mr. John Arthur, and further every day, team and all PSB, may Christ be with you. Thank you for that. There's a little bit of a discussion on dual citizenship, though.
Oh boy,
from them. Can you have dual citizenship? And so that's something I think that we should
tackle that next show.
Next show, should we be able to have dual citizenship? As someone who actually kind of looked for that at some day during the Barack Obama years, I really did think about, is there any way I can get a dual citizenship? Because my mom was born in Argentina, and it's like, is there a way to get that? Because there might be a day where that would be really helpful. Is that something that's patriotic? Is that patriotic?
I have a coworker whose daughter has citizenship in 3 countries.
Whoa! Three is spicy. Like 2 is not.
She's
abnormal.
18.
3 is crazy. We knew one guy who had 50 something.
Yeah,
he collected them like stamps.
I was born in Louisiana. Could I get a dual citizenship?
Well,
no,
I think we might need a deportation back to the.
Oh man,
I love you, Steve. All right, so just wrapping up, final thoughts, Miss Nicki.
Well, I think overall, looking at the government and setting up the amendments, I people are wicked.
They are,
and people are. If you don't have law, they're going to really, abuse freedom, unfortunately. And that's a terrible thing. But also, I do support Donald Trump and the tariff, and I'm praying that it is successful. He has a tendency I think he knows what he's doing. I think the people under him know what they're doing. I do believe we are living in very dangerous times, and a lot of people are not paying attention to other countries and what's going on.
They don't know how dangerous.
We're living in our own comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I think we need to get out of that comfort zone and really see what's happening.
Charlie.
I think the thing that really stirs my heart from today's show is the issue of trying to set up an ethno-state within the
America.
U.S. I cannot implore people enough. This is an issue you need to stay on top of, because this is not going to be just limited to Michigan. This is not going to be limited to just Texas. I'm going to tell you why. Well, that's another time. Texas is being chosen because it's a rich state. So anyway, that's the one that gets me.
Charlie or Steve.
Yeah, and on the same topic that Charlie was talking about, this is a republic, and we were founded on a constitution, and not Sharia law.
Correct.
And that goes with whether or not you want to try to start it up in some state, some city, some town, some wherever, whatever it is. Sharia law does not belong here. It doesn't anywhere in this country.
Nope.
None whatsoever.
Right.
This is a constitutional country. It's a republic. There's a reason it was set up this way. Done this way, given by God.
Mm-hmm.
Done as a Christian country. Now, certainly all faiths are allowed to come. That's what makes this country so great. All are allowed. All can come. All can practice their faiths. Freedom of religion. All are allowed to come here and do and
under
be.
the Constitution.
Exactly. Everybody is free to practice and do, but not set up and do and be their own country.
Right.
That's it. If you love America, if you're going to come here and you're going to swear allegiance to, maybe come to America, swear allegiance to that.
Right.
Mr. Producer, do you have anything to say? Or are you good?
I'm all good.
You're all good? Okay. Just know that I'm going to start asking you for your thoughts. So be thinking thoughtful thoughts. To you, dear audience. To you, dear audience, just to wrap up.
On that.
Be in prayer. We're living in interesting times. There's an old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. We are here. We are living in interesting times. But that's okay. This is an opportunity for the Christian to show their mettle. And when I say show their mettle, I mean you should be transformed if you actually have a mystical union with Christ. If you are part of the bride of Christ, you should be transformed, renewed by the Scripture, your mind, body, and soul, ultimately, your eventual spiritual body. But for now, your mind and soul are renewed. You should be putting Christ on display. We're living in a time where you can do that. And hopefully we can facilitate some interesting conversations here, and we can all chat about it till we're blue in the face. But until you actually start to talk to people in your day-to-day life, you will not be the transformative change. Christ said, be salt and light. Light is an affirmative force, as my friend Abraham Hamilton III would say. It is something that is shown out. Darkness is not an affirmative force. It just reoccupies the space the light is vacated. Got that quote kind of right. You are supposed to be salt and light. Salt jerks meat, cures it, meaning that it is something that is worthwhile and sustainable. It purifies it for the future. Meat that would otherwise rot in the same temperature and environment. But salt changes when it is in the solution of water and it is in the meat, and it changes the meat by its presence. We need to transform the flesh that is in our presence. We need to be speaking to people, engaging the culture, and representing Christ by being accurate reflections. Be salt and light this week, and be in prayer for Trump. The tariff war is concerning, but if God is on our side, who can stand against us?
Amen.
Let's pray that we're on God's side.
Amen.
Let's pray that we're on God's side, and if we're not, let's align ourselves accordingly. With that said, we love you so much. We got anything else for you? I'm kidding. We got one last thing for you. Real quick, which state, if you had to move to one of the 13 colonies today, which state?
Ooh.
I put this in the... that's right, you guys should get the map because I'm
did.
running late. Which state? I'm going to tell you New Hampshire. You know why? The crazy libertarians moved in there. It's the only one that I think is not crazy liberal. You can't open carry there, the constitutional carry.
Oh, we go back to New York.
New York?
Yeah, it's our favorite.
No.
And during the colony time.
No. Well, did you make that specification?
No, I did today, current today.
Oh.
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire?
Florida.
That wasn't one of the 13 states.
Should have been.
Oh. Should have been.